What's your step there? Just step down. So this is where T&T Customs does their work. There's a lot of builders out there, quote unquote, that build what are known as parts casters. In other words, they'll buy their bodies and they'll buy their necks from online vendors or whatever, and they get all the parts together and they just assemble the guitars and then they sell those as custom guitars. We don't do that. We actually buy our own wood and we mill it ourselves. Just a big piece of wood that comes in something like this, and then it ends up getting milled down into custom guitar bodies. So we have different tools that we use to do the different things to get this to where it needs to be workable, so we can make an instrument out of it.
I was sitting at the bar, the doors just fly open. These guys come walking in. I mean, they look like the long riders, you know, right out of the Old West. Trench coats on, hats. I had to go outside and look and see if their horses were tied up. I mean, that's how authentic these guys look. A buddy of mine is just like, that's the sideburns, you know. They just looked so cool. I mean, that was my first impression when I met Chuck.
My songwriting is, it's not, I don't like to take things too serious, you know, it's just whatever you're feeling. Well, I'm headed down Highway 58. I'm gonna see my baby and I can't be late. I ain't got no time to hesitate. That's why I'm taking Highway 58. I'll take 58. Highway 58. Ain't no interstate. It's just Highway 58.
I was born in Hartsville, Oklahoma on October the 3rd, 1929. And the best I remember, we moved to Powhatan, Alabama when I was 7. My dad was a coal miner, and Powhatan's a little mining town, no running water and no gas pipes to heat your stove. My brother and I used to sing songs, and so I needed a guitar. About 10, they bought me a guitar and my brother a fiddle. So at 10, I started playing guitar and I just loved it. I wasn't real good at it naturally at 10 years old, but my first song on the guitar was Steel Guitar Rag. And I'm telling you, I entertained that mining town with that electric guitar because I played Steel Guitar Rag till nobody else could play it like I played it. My mom, once in a while, she would tell me to turn it down because I was rocking the neighborhood.
Pretty much been a Bakersfieldian all my whole life, which means I'm still living here. Moved off a couple times, but you end up back here. That's what they say. I actually really got the music bug, 1964, Ed Sullivan. I was 10 years old, floored me. From that point on, I just wanted to be a Beatle.
My mom and dad met at the Beacon Cafe and got married in 1957 and had their honeymoon at the Castle Royale.
That's right. And I was born in 58.
Yep, and I was born in 62.
Right, you were the last.
You were the first, I was the last.
4 boys in less than 4 years.
A week shy of 4 years. That's why we have a musical connection, because whatever you do, I know what you're going to do before you even do it.
I am from Texas, but I did get to Bakersfield as soon as I could. I can remember being 8 years old and my dad got me a record player from Sears and Roebuck, and it came with a stack of 45 records, and those records were all Bakersfield artists. There was Red Simpson, Hum a Truck was on there, Buck Owens was on there, Merle Haggard. I mean, I think I wore a needle through every one of those records.
There was always music in the house. My dad played piano. My mom would always sing around the house. My dad had an old Oldsmobile, and the dash was huge. I got in there and I laid in that dash. I think we were headed to Hanford to visit my dad's mom. I remember looking up at the stars and just making up melodies and making up words. No idea I was writing songs.
My name is Jim Shaw. member of the Buckaroos, been the leader ever since Don Rich died in 1974. I had my own band in Fresno, California in 1969. I heard about Buck Owens' brand new recording studio down in Bakersfield, California. I wanted to go down, get some prices, brochures, and see about booking a recording session. And the day I got there, Buck happened to be recording out in the studio, had a musician playing the piano that he'd heard could play piano pretty good, rhythm piano, but he was struggling. And it was a guy named David Frizzell. He could not play this particular song. It was kind of tricky. Buck was getting more and more frustrated. Someone told him there was a piano player from Fresno out in the front, so Buck came banging through the doors and scared me to death because he was so famous. There's Buck Owens, and said, "Can you play that song?" And I didn't know what he was talking about because out in the lobby I couldn't hear anything, but I just went with it and said, "Sure," and finished up the recording session that day. Buck asked me at the end if I could start doing more recording sessions with him, and I said, sure, I could do that, and drove back and forth from Fresno to Bakersfield 2-3 times a week. About 3 months later, he called me, asked me to come down and have a little meeting, and offered me the job in the Buckaroos.
There's professionals, and then there's really good professionals. Jimmy, don't miss a lick.
Jim isn't really from Bakersfield, he's from Fresno, but I still love him.
I grew up listening to him on Hee Haw. Just a consummate professional. But the other thing I love about Jim, he's got these really great dry Buck jokes. And I think he tells them better than Buck.
My dad was a guitar player and singer, and my mother sang. Just, family and friends. All of my uncles played guitar, and about twice a month, I guess, they'd all get together and we'd have these big family jam sessions, and everybody would take turns singing and passing it around. And so I started learning guitar right there. And for my 10th birthday, my dad bought me a Harmony Rocket, brand new. My buddy down the street, older brother, was friends with the Ventures. He would teach my buddy Nick guitar licks, who was just learning them. He'd come down and teach me. That would just stoke the coals before the fire was on.
My dad got a job working in the Ingalls shipyard in Pascagoula, Mississippi. He got a job building ships, and we moved to Pascagoula. When I got into high school, I met my first wife. My dad said, "Well, son, we don't believe in divorces and all that in this family." And I said, "I know, Dad, but if you sign this," he had to sign for me to get married. "You sign my papers." He said, "You got to take care of this woman." I said, "I promise you, I'll take care of her the rest of my life." Which I've fulfilled that promise. My family had moved to California. I had relatives all up and down the coast that were big farmers, and the fruit season and cotton picking and all that was appealing. My oldest sister got sick. Her husband sent her out to California to be with Mom, so Mom could take care of her. And he wouldn't let her go alone, so he told me, he said, "I'll pay for Pat, my first wife, pay for her ticket to go to California, and so she'll have somebody to go with." So here I am, 17, and I'm home by myself, and my family's all moved away. And I talked to my mom, and she'd write letters back. You didn't do much phone calling back then because all you had was the wind-up phones, And she says, "You need to come out here." But my dog, I couldn't leave him behind. So one day I'm reading the paper, and I see an ad, and it says, California, share expenses. Well, now that's the way to go. So I called the number and I explained to the guy what I'm going to, I'll take you right to Los Angeles. And I said, well, I've got a dog. And he said, your dog's welcome to go along. So he drove up in front of my house in a brand new Pontiac, and I loaded my bag and my guitar and my dog in the car, and we headed out for California.
One of my first memories in life was actually singing out the back door of our house to the Beatles' Love Me Do. I remember just singing at the top of my lungs. My parents brought home the album and I learned the lyrics and just loved it ever since. Broke out the pots and pans and started pretending I was Ringo.
I grew up listening to, first I remember Hank Snow, Jim Reeves, and then in the 70s it was Chris Christopherson and Glenn Campbell, and then Buck Owens. I would put 2 chairs in front of the hi-fi and then I would just lay there and listen to the entire album. So I kind of feel like a lot of the stuff we listened to were storytelling songs, and I learned a lot about the world through music.
My mother and father got divorced when I was 9 years old, and she met a gentleman who ran the Nile Theater here in Bakersfield. And he and his family, who we're still close today, loved country music. We would be in the car listening to Buck Owens and Merle Haggard and Tanya Tucker. And I would be back there singing the songs along to that, not even realizing how much I was loving what I was doing.
I actually remember, too, when I was even younger, cleaning the church. We would take turns, the families would take turns cleaning the church. And then while my mom was like cleaning off the pews, I was up on stage and I would sneak the microphone off the preacher's thing, and I would start singing a song and pretending I was a star.
My first job, working at a drugstore, I was 16 years old, and I used to go out with the girls. They would take me out, give me a fake ID, and I used to go to the blackboard. I saw Beverly Williams there for the first time, and that's what got me all excited about singing.
We were on a Texas trip going to see our family. I was skating around because skates were really big back then, and I heard the lounge act playing, and my sister, like she always got me in trouble, she peeked in the back door and she goes, "Hey, will you let my sister sing?" And I'm like, "No, Mary, no." And they said, "Sure, what do you want to sing?" And it was "You Light Up My Life" by Debbie Boone. And I got up there and I just sang to the top of my lungs, and it was just, it was a feeling I had never felt before.
My older brother played guitar, and he got into music professionally first. That was Roger. And he would let me come out and sit in with him at where he worked. Even when I wasn't old enough, I always managed to get me in.
John Snyder, Tim Cartwright, they had a band called Artesia, and I had just graduated from high school, and their bass player got sick vocally. He still could play, but they needed someone to sing for them, and they asked me to sing, and I had to learn like 30 songs in 3 days. I did an Arvin High School dance, stood there like a pole, like like I was so nervous, but they asked me that night to join the band, and that's where it all started.
You know, making it in the music business is rough these days. There's a lot of talent out there, and the folks at Wrangler Jeans have sponsored a national competition to bring some of that great talent here tonight. Right. And I have to tell you that these young artists are among the best I've heard in rock, country, and rhythm and blues.
A local radio station here in Bakersfield was doing the Country Wrangler Showdown, which is where I met some of the first artists that I'm still friends with today. I did not win. Jennifer Keel won that contest. I did place third. I was incredibly proud of myself.
My first paid gig, I was 19, a place called the Howdy House Country. Country Charlie Chucker was the name of the band. But I could play a little bit of slide guitar, which could mimic steel guitar, so they took me on.
And that was my first introduction to country.
I tried so hard just to satisfy you, boy. Why you wanna make me cry? I know I love you, but I don't know why.
I had my own band. We played at many of the places around town. With the Dooleys, I played at the Executive, Porter's House, Rockabilly's. And then when they broke up, I started my own band, Jennifer Keel and Branded.
I don't know if you've had a chance to see her. She's been in Bakersfield, and I tell you, she is terrific. You'll see what I mean. Ladies and gentlemen, Jennifer Keel and Branded. Give them a hand.
I guess we were singing a lot of the things that people wanted to hear. We had some originals as well. And so there was just a time when we were being used to open all the bigger concerts.
Take another little piece of my heart now, baby. Want you to take it. Take another little piece of my heart. I know you will, and you will break it. Take another little piece of my heart now, baby. 'Cause you know you got it. If it makes you feel good, I said take it. Take another little piece of my heart now, baby. Take another little piece of my heart, my heart, my heart, my heart, my heart.
I sang with David Frizzell. I sang with Keith Urban when we were opening for them. So, you know, they would come back on stage and sing a song with us, which was really exciting. In 2000, I had my first child. And then I kind of got out of the business a little bit.
A friend of mine had taken me under his wings and started recording some of my original music with him, and I was probably 32. I'd never played in a band, only played at my home for myself, and my dream was just to play one time at a house party. And I went and played this house party with my friend, and people were jumping up and down and dancing and singing and moving and grooving, and something happened. I got the bug, and I haven't stopped since.
On a dark, moonless Mississippi night. On a dark, moonless Mississippi night. She was screaming out.
You know, Foster's been good to a lot of the musicians around town. He keeps them, you know, playing, and I like that about him.
On a dark, moonless Mississippi night. On a dark.
When we got to Houston, Texas, he said, "Oh, this is as far as I go." I said, "What do you mean this is as far as you go?" He said, "Yeah, I go back the other way." And they had a little doghouse in a parking lot there, and other cars. And he said, "You wait here, and there'll be a car coming through soon going to California." Well, this girl in the little doghouse said, "Let's take this kid up to Dallas because more cars come through Dallas than they do here."
Being what I thought was a rocker, the country just kind of got on me, and I think what it was Merle's lyric was probably the spiritual thing that got me the most. He was he would coin these phrases, and he was talking about my surroundings, where I'm living, and I was just identifying with it, you know. But it wasn't just that. Buck Owens, he was like a rocker in disguise, you know. He had that Telecaster up, a lot of treble. Full treble, I think. That's how he liked his. I don't even know how to go there.
On the way to Dallas, here's a 1941 Packard parked in front of a bar, but in the window it had a sign that said, "California or bust." So the guy I'm riding with just pulls over the curb, never says a word, "Be right back," maybe. Got out and he goes in the bar, and then he comes back out and said, "Okay, I got your ride to California, going to LA. And I said, "What about my dog?" He said, "No, your dog's fine, it's all set up." So they transferred me from his car into this Packard. And then I meet Sarge. They introduced me to the guy that I was going to be riding with, and he was Sarge made over. He was so typical of Sarge that people never saw him before in their life, and they would automatically call him Sarge, like Sarge in the funny papers, you know. And when they were putting my stuff in the car, you couldn't hardly get in the back seat because it would fill with cases of oil. And I wondered if he was transporting oil or what he was doing, you know, but I'm 17-year-old. 17, you don't ask too many questions, you know. So anyway, moved everything around so me and my dog could get in there, and we headed out.
I hooked up with a buddy of mine, Ronnie Wing. He was a good singer and writer. We formed a band called Wayne Seaton Band. We were the house band at Trout's for several years. And Trout's is a legendary oil dell country bar, unfortunately gone now.
There were people from all walks of life in there. You had your bikers that came in. You had young kids that just turned 21 and they came in shorts and flip-flops. Any night of the week, you'd have someone in there who was a doctor, lawyer, professionals. There were women who would come in there dressed in evening gowns. It was just a great cross-section of society. Everybody enjoyed the honky-tonk.
What you see here right now as far as guitars that we're actually working on, there's a rack with, I think there's 7 or 8 bodies there. Those are actually the Trout's casters. The tops are made from wood that came from the Trout's honky-tonk that burnt down last April. We ended up being able to make enough, to get enough salvaged wood that we can make 11 Trout's casters. There's 11 of them total. These are necks that are in the process of being built for the Trout's casters, and then we hand carve these to the shape. It's no CNC machines. It's not done by computers. It's all done by these 2 hands right here. These are in different stages of doing the inlay work. So the Trouts that you see in all of these is actually a replica of the Trout sign that was outside the club that was on the brick wall right above the bench where everybody sat and talked to Red Simpson and all those guys. They sat and smoked underneath the sign. Teresa replicated that, and then we shrunk it down, obviously, and we're inlaying that into the necks, the Trouts and Mother of Pearl. And the fish are all done in abalone. We're also building a bass guitar out of some of the wood, which is what this is. This is actually modeled after a 1951 Fender P-Bass, what this is known as, and that's Trout's wood on the top. So this is an acoustic guitar that we're building, a dreadnought, that's made out of, this top is made out of wood from Trout's, and you can see that I left some of the original paint, and it's just going to have ebony binding on it. Wow. So the back and the sides are roasted flame maple. Obviously those did not come from Trout's, but the top is all Trout's wood. This will be a one of a kind. There was not another one like this in the world. It'll be the only one that's made from Trout's wood.
I think it's really cool and it's special to me that the Trout's wood is getting repurposed into a guitar because I worked there, performed music there for over 20 years off and on, mostly on, and there was a lot of music made inside those walls, and now there's going to be a lot of music made from those walls.
I met my wife at Trout's in 1986, and I've been married ever since. And that burnt down.
Yeah, that burnt down.
Banachek's burnt down.
People in Bakersfield don't even realize how cool it is to be from Bakersfield. But you go other places and you're from Bakersfield?
You take a lot for granted here, I think. And we go down to LA and we play a gig, and the musicians down there would treat you a little bit different, you know. It's I can never put my finger on it, but it's like they were threatened almost. There was a threat there. I don't know if it was they were thinking you might whack them one, or if it was musically a threat. Maybe you're a little better than they're used to hearing, or you had some different edge going on that they're looking for down there.
You know, Texas is funny. When I go down to Austin or San Marcos or Wimberley, all those little music communities, they love me down there because I'm from Bakersfield. I mean, that's what opened the doors for me. And like you said, you know, there's a restaurant in Texas dedicated to Bakersfield.
I grew up in Sherman, Texas, which as a young kid I also remember finding out that Buck Owens was from Sherman, Texas, where he was born. And Saturday nights, man, it was Hee Haw. Every Saturday night. It was the Porter Wagner show. It was Dolly Parton. It was all those television shows, Grand Ole Opry, that my family and I watched.
Bakersfield's the mecca to them, still to this day. The Bakersfield Sound and Buck and Red. Red is a big deal in Texas.
I loved Red. And Red was a kind and generous, affectionate, funny, just a character.
I stopped at a roadhouse down in Texas. Was a little place called Hamburger Dan's. Heard that old jukebox playing a song called That Truck Driving Man. The waitress then brought me some coffee. Well, I said, thank you, ma'am, and then I called her back again. Said that old song sure does fit me, 'cause I'm a truck driving man.
Honestly, don't even remember a time in my life that Red wasn't there. I don't know. He was just always there. You know, he's Bakersfield. And he was a songwriting machine. He didn't just write truck driving songs that he's known for. He wrote the most beautiful love songs and funny story songs.
Yeah, and like Dave Dudley, I was gone. I got them old truck wheels rolling. I'm on my way to San Antonio.
One night I was performing at Trout's, and I was facing like this way, and I was singing a song called Somewhere Between. It's a Merle Haggard song. And while I'm singing, all of a sudden, from somewhere, I hear this background vocal singing some harmonies, and I turned to look, and it was Red Simpson. He had jumped up there and started singing. It was just like, Red, you know. Later when I got down, he was like, oh man, I hope I didn't make you mad. I couldn't help myself. That's like a favorite song of mine, and I just jumped up and sang with you. And I said, no, I loved that, Red. From that point on, if I was working somewhere and Red came in, I got him up with me and we sang that song. And if he was working somewhere and I came in, he got me up and we sang that song together. Didn't matter if it was a dive or a beautiful nightclub. It just didn't matter.
When I get my call up to Florida, they're gonna haul me away from this land. I'm gonna drive this old truck up to heaven, 'cause I'm a truck driving man. Well, pour me another cup of coffee, for it is the best in the land. I'll put a quarter in the jukebox and play that truck driving man. Yeah, and play that truck driving man.
Played like 5 or 6 different shows with Red.
You know, he used to always go over to our cousin Glenda's house and play.
Oh yeah,
He was always over.
Well, remember when I was 20 years old, he was over there playing in the backyard.
Right.
Yeah, and I actually played with him then.
But he went to sleep, and I'm driving, and all of a sudden, I hear a strange noise go, drrrr, and on. I pulled him to stop. I said, sorry, something wrong, because I heard a funny noise. He said, did you check the oil? I said, no, I didn't check the oil. I've just been driving an hour and a half or so. And he said, well, you got to check the oil. So he got out and he checked the oil. Sure enough, it was low on oil. Well, you broke my car. And I said, what do you mean I broke your car? He said, yeah, you should have checked the oil. He said, "You're going to have to pay to fix my car." I told him I couldn't pay for his car. He said, "Well, that's all right. When we get to L.A., we'll go to the Veterans Hospital and we'll sell your blood. They'll pay me $25 a pint."
You think a good woman's hard to find? I'll tell you something you should keep in mind. You think a hard woman's good to find? I'll tell you right where to find the kind. I like the women sharp dressed in high heels. I like the girls in Bakersfield. I like the women that are ready to yield. I like the girls in Bakersfield.
We ruled around Bakersfield for about 10 years. Then Monty starts putting this band, Monty Byron, putting this band together. And he made me an offer where I had to quit the Wayne Seaton band. They had a few of the songs already recorded and they were just blowing my mind. It was so good. Monty is such a great producer anyway, so the tone and the mixing and the song quality, I really believed that he was going to get a deal.
Okay, Stanley. Third floor, that's where I started New Frontier, was this old building. Ready out there? That's the band that I had in the 80s. Started right here. Third floor, man. What's your name? Well, they got a whole nother clientele living here now.
Somebody have mercy and tell me what is wrong with me.
I had to really ponder that and get up the balls to do it, but I'd had to tell Ronnie, hey, I'm going with Monty.
These guys are really something. Everybody in country music is talking about them. You get to see them first here at the Grand Palace. From Bakersfield, California, MCA recording artist, Big House.
Thank y'all. In Nashville, the bands don't write their own songs. They don't even play on their own records. We made our own record. We produced our own record. We wrote our own songs. And then we went to Nashville and they said, okay, they got to wait a year and a half for the record to come out, so just hold your horses.
That's what happened.
And we said no. We refused to wait.
Wedding day.
So by the time that first record came out, we had played in every town in this country. I think we did about 3 years in a row. We probably did about 700 shows.
At least.
At least.
Look at one money.
Hey, Monty.
Buck, I'm blown out, brother.
Hey, listen, let me tell you what. I never before have introduced anybody here, but this guy and I got a little bit acquainted. He's a hell of a guy, ain't he?
Buck would always say that.
Wrote our own songs, kept your own publishing.
That became the story.
Yeah. And we sounded like nobody else in Nashville.
Baby, will you be tonight?
It's a dream I had at 25 years old. I've been dreaming to be a lifer musician, you know, go on the road in the bus with the boys and tour the United States and maybe more. And it didn't happen. 35 didn't happen. Guess what? 45? I'm 45 years old, 3 kids at home, wife gets signed to a major label, MCA Nashville. Huge. So I'm in the bus, there I go. Well, guess what? It's not the same when you're 45 as when you're 25. That bus is tough. It is tough. And it was, I had to try to balance out too. Your dream that you finally got, better late than never. But you got your family, you know, to take care of.
What a career you've had. That song, in fact, Don't Believe Everything You're Told, got to relate to the music business.
Well, I'm going to speak for Chuck for 2 seconds here, but he was the first one of us from Bakersfield that left Bakersfield to come to Nashville and make it. And, you know, all of his friends back home are like, yeah, you know, you're crazy, go to Nashville, they'll never you know, you'll never make it, whatever. And he came out here at a tough time, like everybody that comes here.
Sure.
You know, it's a tough town. And so he came back to Bakersfield and, you know, I mean, if you want to finish your story.
Well, yeah, it's a song about dreaming, you know, everyone does that. And we just kept dreaming, and finally it did come true from dreaming and holding on to it.
Yeah.
Well, the end of the story is that when we started this band, when we got our deal, and we were looking for songs and writing songs, and Chuck had written the tune when he got back, and he says, well, I got this little tune here for you. And he played it for us, and it took every one of us out.
Is that
I mean,
right?
we said, man, that's the story of every musician that's ever come here and tried to make it, you know, and fulfilling that dream. And so I thank God we get to come here to Nashville and sing it. That's a big deal.
No doubt.
I want to tell you, we're going to have some music. I've been hearing these guys. I was here today at sound check, and we extended the sound check for an hour so I could hear them. These guys can really play, and I've made this prediction 3 or 4 times, and I'm going to make it with this guy. This band and Monty and all these guys they're gonna be big old huge stars before too long. Yeah!
What's that blue cheer hound doing in my chair? Better throw that dog on, get him out of there. I've been walking since the quarter to 4. I'm gonna keep on talking till you open that door. It's cold outside. Let me come on in. Get a little loving in the oven, sugar pie in the pan. I know what you got cooking, baby. I'm a hungry man. I've been coming round nearly every night. But you keep.
We were out there a couple of years on the road. Not at one time, you know, I got to come home every few months or something. And it was a very exciting time for my wife and kids too. They got to come to Nashville and we, you know, we had to deal with the whole thing. But I have to admit, I was relieved when it had run its course and I could come home and just get a real job. I wanted to the music business, kind of creepy. I thought, you know, it's not as honest as you might think.
Come on, groove me, Dave.
We remember where we came from. It's a lot of work, but we live for that 90 minutes or 2 hours on stage every night.
This is sound check.
Two-thirds of the population lives on that side of the Mississippi, so that's why Nashville's a music hub, because you can go to Florida, Oklahoma, up to New York and back, so everybody has to be based out of Nashville when they're touring. And I did it for a couple of years. I'd come home and then be gone and not see my kids for 2 months, and it was a fortune to call and to fly home. It was just too much for me, and I had little kids at home, so I made the decision to come home.
He would pick up different hitchhikers, and he couldn't drive that car. It'd take him 2 blocks to get stopped, and then here the guy would come running, and he rolled down the window. I said, "You got any money?" And if the guy said yes, he'd say, "Get in." If he said he didn't have any money, he said, "Well, somebody will pick you up," and he'd take off and leave him in a cloud of black smoke. And we were going down the railroad tracks, and here comes a hobo off the road tracks on crutches, and we did have another seat in the car, so he stopped and asked the hobo, said, "You got any money?" He said, "No, I don't have any money, but I got a check waiting on me in San Diego in the mail." He said, "Well, get in." And I said, "Sarge, you're supposed to take me to LA. I didn't know San Diego was on the way to LA or what, you know. You're supposed to take me to Los Angeles, or have you forgotten that?" He said, "I'm going to San Diego first. If you don't like it, you can get out, you know." Well, I didn't have any way of getting out. I'm trapped. But that night we stopped at a hotel and we started to go the next morning. I said, "We need a donut to travel on." So 3 or 4 doors down was a donut shop. So we went down and I bought a cup of donuts. And as I'm coming back, here's the car driving off and my suitcases sitting on the sidewalk and my dog's tied to the fire plug. And this guy's in the middle of the street and he had to stop at a stop sign or something. The guy with me run out there and said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm leaving you guys." He said, "Well, you may leave me, but you ain't leaving this kid." He said, "I'm leaving both of them if you don't like it." He said, "No, you ain't." And he socked him, and then they were fighting right through the window of the car right out in the middle of the street. And he was beating the tar out of Sarge. And finally, old Sarge said, "Okay, throw the kid in." So he run over and he grabbed my bags, and he threw him in, and he grabbed my dog, and he said, "You get in and don't you take any crap off of that old SOB."
You don't know me, but you don't like me. Say you care, that's how I feel. How many of you that sit and judge me ever walk the streets of Bakersfield? Come on, Jim.
I started in 1970 as a buckaroo, and at that point just traveled with the band. We did about 160 dates a year, plus we did the HWY shows. We did that for 17 years.
I'm in Oildale. I stop at a donut shop one time, and here comes Buck walking in to get him a donut. And when you're standing that close to a legend, your jaw's just dropping. And I was like, that's Buck. Oh, it's right there, you know. And I told everybody for weeks I had breakfast with Buck. It's kind of true.
As a start, a buckaroo, you know, you'd see him in the recording studio on the road, but not much elsewhere. But through those first 2 or 3 years, he gave me other hats to wear. I became involved in his publishing company and ran his publishing and got involved in his record production. So I saw more and more of him when we weren't on the road. And so during those years, we became closer. I would say a friend, but of course he was always the boss.
Dad told me about Juan Lopez, the Lopez house. He said that those were the original, well, we call them buckaroos now, but they were the original vaqueros, who were the best cowboys that ever lived. They were all Mexican cowboys, were called vaqueros.
It's love.
So I said to Buck Owens one day, I go, "Hey, Buck,
you know where the name Buckaroo comes from? And he didn't know. And I said, Buckaroo. And he says, no, Monty, where'd it come from? I said, that's vaquero.
Vaquero.
But people could never say vaquero, so it went vaquero, Buckaroo.
It's love that we're talking about. It's love.
The Buckaroos, we played by ourselves quite a bit, and usually had some sort of a girl singer working with us. I first met Kim, she was probably 20 years old in a music store, got introduced to her.
I was helping with the Miss Kern County pageants here in Bakersfield. I'm thinking I was still 24, 25 years old, and Rick Davis had come in, who, by the way, is the father of Jonathan Davis from Korn, and he was doing the sound for the pageants, and so I sang for that, and we kind of got to know each other a little bit, and I needed a keyboard player one night, and Rick Davis plays keyboards. So he started playing keyboards at these little side, Silver Bullet was the first one, and he had invited Jim Shaw, who was one of the Buckaroos and Buck Owens' right arm sideman.
She did a lot of work with us at that time. We didn't travel much on the road, but usually in the local gigs. Not only was she a good singer, she's just got a sweet personality, very genuine.
Crazy. I'm crazy for feeling so lonely. I'm crazy for feeling so blue.
There were times when I was with the Buckaroos where I needed to be in Nashville. It was natural for me to call Jennifer and say, can you come in and sit in with me? But not just Jennifer Keel, there were Teresa Spanky, Pam Lowe from Los Angeles. It was great to be able to bring other people in to get to experience working with Buck Owens.
Then I got the call, from, it was probably Jim Shaw, to sub in at the Crystal Palace. When Kim wasn't singing, then she used to fill in for me at the other places like the Executive with the Dooleys. So we kind of came up together, Kim Maccabee and I.
Bakersfield is definitely a music town, no different than Austin or Nashville, New York, but we're really known as a guitar town.
I mean, you had Roy Nichols and the incredible Don Rich, who came here as a fiddle player, and then Buck showed him how to play guitar. And when Don joined the band, they, you know, it was like the Everly Brothers or John and Paul. CMA Awards, Band of the Year. He was a band leader. He took some of the pressure off of Buck. I'm proud to be from a guitar town.
They packed the house and put on a terrific show. I kidded one time about Buck telling all these guys they got to work so hard. At the end of a job, there better not be a dry thread on them. He'll fire them every one. Buck, what are you doing down there?
Hey, listen, I have got with me one of the very great songwriters and singers and song stylists, my old friend Red Simpson. And Red's got some great records out. Red, do us one. Do us one of them truck songs. All right. How about Runaway Truck?
Bucket had health issues, and I know the last night he played, then it was the night he died, or that early morning at the Palace. He was not himself, but he played at the Crystal Palace. Last thing he said to me was, patted me on the shoulder as he walked off the stage. We usually finished it up without him, and said, thanks, Jim. See you tomorrow night. And that's the last I saw him.
Big old trucks no more.
The Buckaroos were always, they were Buck Owens and the Buckaroos, but we were actually signed with Capitol Records as an act ourselves. We were a separate entity as well and used to tour quite a bit without Buck. It wasn't a strange thing for us to continue playing after Buck passed away, and especially since we had the Crystal Palace and a great stage and venue. For quite a few years, we kept it up. His son, Buddy Alan Owens, came over and sang with us. And when Buddy couldn't and wouldn't do that anymore, that's when we started to kind of decide to have a little more fun and branch out. That would be when we invited Monty Byron to come to sing with us.
Y'all mind if I have some fun with this thing?
He just manifests music. That's what I think of Monty. His melodies come from just a deep place. His father was a guitar player, and he's from Bakersfield, and he just grew up with that culture.
My mother has a pretty good ear, but no rhythm.
No rhythm.
Like she dances like a pogo stick. It's just horrible. But my father had great rhythm and was a great singer. You're a good dancer. I never said you was a bad dancer. You had Tanner in 61.
No, I had Tanner at 60, Art at 62. I mean, Tanner at 62.
Oh, that's right. That's right. June of the
But you were born in the 50s, you and Ronnie. Ronnie had beautiful long hair. Oh, we lived on the river in a mansion, actually. Stanley even had a stage built and all that crap. My husband was a party thrower.
My dad threw the biggest parties in Kern County.
It was, as long as he could use the money I made.
Well, it didn't matter. You let him do it, and they were extravagant parties. We had valet parking for our parties.
Oh, yeah, we always had valet parking.
The most diverse crowd you ever seen in Bakersfield at those parties.
Yeah, from supervisors to senators to sheriffs to whatever.
For us, it was just fun. Monty is a funny guy, talented guy. It just stretched us out and got us to do something different than what we had done for decades.
I got a phone call from my buddy Bob Mitchell. He says, "Hey, how would you feel about singing with the Buckaroos?" This is right after Buck died.
And it felt kind of sacrilegious to me, and I'm not really a country singer, you know? So I passed on it. And then he called me back. He said, no, they'll let you do anything you want. Matter of fact, I called Jim Shaw up, and I told Jim, I said, well, you know, I'm not your typical country singer. I don't sound like Merle or Buck. And Jim was the same way. He said, man, just come down and do what you want to do.
Sweet dreams of you.
The year Buck died, I felt like I don't know why, I felt like my musical career had died with him, because I thought, well, gosh, you know, what are we going to do? And who am I going to sing with? And so then Monty came in and started playing with the Buckaroos. And the Buckaroos also played in the old version of the Buckaroos too. So there was a version of the Buckaroos with Kim, and there was a version of the Buckaroos with Monty, and then with me.
One of the first things I did when I started singing with Jennifer was her father passed away, and I sang at his funeral. And I think that's when her and I became close as really good friends. And so we sang together 12, 13 years at the Palace. I sang with her longer than anybody I've ever sung with in my life. I used to joke and say Jennifer could sing harmony to a wet rock. I mean, that girl could sing to anything. She was born to be a harmony singer. And as far as singing lead, I put her in that category with like Emmylou Harris and Linda Ronstadt, and just a pure voice.
I said, hey, good looking, yeah, you. What's your guy cooking? How's about cooking something up with me? Hey, sweet baby, all right. Don't you think maybe?
Mr. Terry Christopherson!
Crystal Palace is rocking tonight, folks.
Terry Christopherson is our guitar player, steel player, has been since 1975. He and I played rock and roll together when we were teenagers. That's how far we go back. But I brought him into the Buckaroos. He started in '75 after Don Rich was killed in a motorcycle accident. Terry is a terrific musician, but he had some health issues. He felt that he wouldn't be able to play on stage. He says, I'm just going to let you down. I might get tired. I might have to quit in the middle of the show. And I said, you know, Terry, what if we hired somebody else to play guitar with you? And then, you know, during the night, if you feel bad, you just get up and walk off and go home. That'll be fine. He thought that sounded like a good idea. And he and I both knew Chuck Seaton.
This is the first time I've been back here since you've gone.
I'm going to start by saying he's a terrific person, just the nicest guy you'd ever want to know. Stellar guitar player, knows how to play the right part, and then he sticks with it.
Memories flooding back inside of my brain. As we shared a glass of your sea-like sugar cane.
He started playing with us. He and Terry worked together very well. And then there were periods of times when Terry didn't even come in and Chuck played with us. But ever since, when the Buckaroos play, Chuck plays with us.
I don't to say goodbye.
There's some health issues with Terry, the steel guitar, lead guitar, and one of the main singers in the Buckaroos. And Jim Shaw, the leader of the Buckaroos and the keyboard player, needed to get somebody in there to kind of fill in until he healed up. And he asked me if I'd be interested. And so, well, there I'm scared shitless again. I'm thinking, I'm a guitar player, but I'm not really thinking I'm a Don Rich or something. I have a lot of different bands I'm involved in, and I would have to, this is first and third weekend of every month. They would book you 1 year at a time. It was job security for a musician, and they pay pretty nice. When I got my turn up there, I've got Terry on the steel guitar right here, and Jim on the keyboard on this side. And they have played so long together that their dynamics, and they know each other. It's like some sort of telepathy. And I've got headphones on. I'm right in the middle of the two of them. And a lot of times I don't even play. I just stand up there and enjoy.
This is where the cowboy rides away.
The 14-piece band encompasses a 4-piece horn section. Typically, we have the saxes and a trumpet, great players, and then we have the 4 lady singers, the background singers, who are a lot of fun. They always look great and sing well, add a big part to the band. And then we have our great rhythm section, with the drummer and Mr. Chris Neufeld playing the keyboards and guitar players, and we all take our turn singing, so not there's not one person that sings through the whole show. I guess you can say life in Bakersfield is pretty much all I've ever known. It's been in my blood ever since I was born. Everybody in Bakersfield plays music. For instance, my dad played guitar and grew up around many bands, mostly in the rock genre. I didn't learn much of this town's musical history until much later in life. For instance, Buck Owens and Merle Haggard, they really put the town on the map with their brand of country music. I think my love of music kicked in right after I was born. In fact, I always loved music, and I still do. I had a toy piano at 2 years old, and I taught myself, and playing all sorts of stuff, nursery rhymes, and I think at one night I played the Cheers theme song. And also the drums came later, maybe a year or two later. I don't exactly remember at what age I started.
I haven't done a gig without Chris, in
Well, every now and then you'll do one over.
Maybe one in a year, but I don't play without Chris. It goes much deeper than that. I don't make a record without Chris. I bring him to Texas. I bring him to Frisco. I bring him to LA. I bring him to every recording session I do. I bring Chris because he's the magic.
Red hot love running through my blood. I was hoping to be the one, but the highway, yeah, that's my home. Something tells me I've stayed too long. This feeling keeps me moving on the highway, yeah, that's my home. Don't you worry, baby.
Yeah, I want to just share with you how I got to know Chris Neufeld. Years went by, we hadn't even gotten together, and we put another album together, which in the process had a lot of strings, keyboards, high harmonies, and the album turned out awesome. But we needed a utility guy to cover all that stuff because we wanted to play it live at the Crystal Palace. Chris, they were saying, I was kind of hearing before I'd met him, he's a savant, you know. I'm thinking, well, never met one of those, you know. But I know he had autism, and so he shows up at rehearsal. We got the whole original band, a Big House, and Chris. And he had already learned every single part of the album, every song. I mean, perfectly. It was like he was a song. And it was quite a remarkable thing to witness. I went to meet him to shake his hand, and oh, he was just a cold fish. He didn't like shaking hands. He didn't like anyone to touch him. He didn't have anything to say to anyone. He just would show up, do his thing, blow you away, and leave, you know. Well, since that time, I've been in many bands with him. Foster Campbell and Friends, Deep Water, and Big House, as far as that goes. But through the years, now I guess it's been another 10 years, maybe 15, he's slowly coming out of this autism shell, and I think it's the music. If you could see some of the footage of some of the current bands where he just speaks up on the microphone, he takes over, you know, for his little segment there, and he shakes your hand, and he's quite sociable.
I think for me it has been calming and exciting. I mean, it's like I can play anything and, you know, try to forget about whatever stress is bothering me for a bit.
First time I ever met Chris, I walked into Fish Lips for a guitar player's birthday, Catfish.
Yeah.
And he was up on stage playing. I didn't know who the keyboard player was, and I kept asking everybody, who's that keyboard player? He's really good. And finally somebody said, well, that's his dad over there. So Dave Neufeld, his dad. So I walked over to Dave and I said, hey man, your kid is sick.
He's good.
Meaning good.
Not sick, good. Yeah.
And his dad looked at me and turned around and walked away. And I said, what did I say, something wrong? And then somebody at the table said, yeah, his kid is autistic. He's a genius, but he's autistic.
And I felt so bad. I thought that I had offended Dave. So I run outside and I grab Dave and I go, hey man, I didn't mean nothing by that. And he looks at me and he goes, we're just fucking with you. We knew you're Monty Byram. We know who you are. And that night, he became my keyboard player.
It's been a long time. We missed you.
We drive by this guy, he's standing on the side of the road with a briefcase and a nice overcoat and hitchhiking. And Sarge does his normal, he stops about 2 blocks away and the guy comes up, he says, do you have any money? And he said, yeah, I got money. He said, well, get in. So he got in, sat down by me in. And as we was driving, after a little while, this guy was pretty smart. I forget his name. He could read what was going on. He looked at me and he said, how did you get in this mess? And so I explained to him, I said, I'm trapped. I paid him to take me to California, and that's been about a week ago, and I'm still not in California. My family didn't know where I was or what I was doing. You know, they were going frantic trying to locate me, and I didn't have access to a phone or anything. He said, you're not trapped. When we come the next time, I'm gonna buy you a ticket, the bus ticket to Bakersfield. And he said, if you pay me back, that's all right. If you never pay me back, that's okay too, you know.
What do you think? I love that boy.
And I said, but I can't do that. They won't let me on the bus with my dog. He said, yeah, that's right. You have to leave your dog. I said, I can't do that. So I'll never forget, we're driving down a long blacktop highway, railroad track over here with a little phone caboose and like they used to have to communicate. And over here's this beautiful little white house with a white picket fence. And I said, Sarge, stop at this house. He said, what for? I said, just give me a minute, Sarge, stop at this house for a second. He said, I'm gonna give you 2 minutes. So he pulled over in front of the house and I didn't know if anybody was home or not, but I jumped out and I ran up and knocked on the door. And this gentleman kind of halfway opened the door, he was worried about who's the door, I think, out in the middle of nowhere. And I said, I only got 2 minutes to tell you my story. I'm trapped in a situation I can't get out of. I'm trying to get to California. I've got $2 left and my dog. I said, I'll give you my $2 and you ship my dog to California, COD. He said, keep your $2 and give me your dog.
Bakersfield sound attitude was one of a kind. It was in your face. They had their soft, sweet songs as well, but it was kind of a brawling town. People, stood up for themselves. They talked confidently and they played their music confidently. They came to, kick your ass.
75 miles away, the bands don't sound like they do in Bakersfield. They sound different. They have different sound. They're putting more jazz chords in them and doing different things than the bands that I play with in Bakersfield. And I think the bands around here kind of try to, a lot of them, the older guys especially, they try to stick to that country sound that they're used to, and it is a unique sound. But it's hard to explain. You just got to hear it.
When I was a kid, what I was most impressed with was that even the Beatles were covering Buck. They did Act Naturally, and matter of fact, years later, Ringo came out here and Jim Shaw produced Ringo and Buck together. So that means Jim Shaw produced one of the Beatles. And that's about as big as you can get in my book.
I've got a tiger by the tail, it's plain to see. Won't be much when you get through with me. I'm losing weight, I'm turning mighty pale.
The reason that we were edgier was this was the crossroads of America. I mean, Highway 99 and Highway 58, there ain't a trucker out there didn't come through that town, stop in one of those little honky-tonks, maybe spend the night and listen to some good music.
Where it all started, it was started with Buck and Merle, and that was the original Bakersfield sound. What's Bakersfield sound now is a different story.
I got a two-piece setup. I started playing in coffee houses with a kick snare and a hi-hat, no cymbals, just the groove. And then I brought it to the big stage, and I love it.
So Hot Taco was originally was you, Billy, Chuck, and Ron.
And Ron, so it was the same guys that were in Big House.
Right.
When Big House broke up, we formed Hot Taco as a local thing, but it was really good. We won.
Kind of pissed me off.
It pissed you off, but we won Country Band of the Year here in Bakersfield at some little contest, and then went down to LA and did the state thing. We were country rock, the same thing as Big House.
Yeah.
And just great players. Billy Russell's a great guitar player and a singer.
Well, he was the original guitar player before Chuck.
He was in Big House.
Baby, come home. You didn't leave me nothing here that means a damn to me.
My dad was hardcore country. Then my mom, she was an oldie but goodie, so she liked, the Motown stuff.
That's okay. It don't matter what you do or say, 'cause you know shit's gonna happen anyway.
My brothers and sisters were all, 70s rock, and I kind of got this big influence of country, rock, Motown, and I believe that like Chuck and Tanner and all those guys were raised that same way.
Yeah, that's alright. That's alright with me. Baby, no, that's alright.
Billy Russell is one of those guys. I mean,
and you
monster guitar player, great singer. Chuck was the first monster guitar player.
He was.
He's the reason.
He's the guy we all looked up to.
Yeah, man, he still is.
You had your favorite rock star and you went up to him and you were like, hey, how are you? He would be like the guy that's like, hi, I'm Chuck Seaton. He'd talk to you, he'd be totally approachable. You put any kind of guitar on him, it don't matter what it looks like. You put it on Chuck and it's instant rock star. That with some shades. Suds was the place to be. Everything was happening at Suds.
Let's go! Put your hand in mine. We'll have a real good time. Let's laugh all today out in the country. Ooh, out in the country, living down an old dusty road. Ooh, out in the country, you know that's where I wanna go. Out in the country, out in the country, out in the country. Let's go!
I stopped at a roadhouse in Texas, a little place called Hamburger Dan. Heard that old jukebox a-playing a song called That Truck Driving Man. Here come David, he's gonna help me. A waitress then brought me some coffee. I thanked her and called her again. I said that old song sure does fit me, 'cause I'm a truck driver.
I've been in Red's house many times and sat there right there on that couch and got to sing. So it's really cool that David was singing with Red. Unfortunately, it turned out that Red passed away the very next day.
You know what used to be up here?
What?
My dad used to play cards up there.
In back of a barn, more like a shack, found an old jukebox sitting in the back.
I was performing with Assorted Cheese, and we'd play over there at Suds Tavern, and I got to meet all kinds of musicians. And Suds Tavern was a beer and wine place, and right across the street was Guthrie's, and on our breaks we'd head over there and have a shot.
Was old, had to clean off some hair, surprised it would turn turn, so I took the dare. I found the groove when the needle went down. Somebody said, hey, that's that Bakersfield sound. Oh yeah. I jumped back when I heard the beat. Two-stepping, heart stomping, leapt to my feet. The dance hall was shaking, it was Saturday night.
I used to come in on Monday night. My old keyboard player would come in with me, and it'd be quiet around 6 o'clock, you know, and everyone's getting off work, coming in, and then I'd say we'd sitting there having a drink, and it's really quiet, and we're talking, and then about 9 o'clock, people just start rolling in, and by 10 o'clock, there's confetti, everybody dancing on the tables. It's just really crazy.
Straight through town, get to LA before the sun goes down. Buck sent a message from the great beyond. Crying time turned my radio on. Kick it. North of Tulare, got a tiny little bar on the edge of town, not too far.
Watching her come up with her beautiful vocal ability, and this is Billy Russell's lovely wife, Glenda. Glenda, where are you, darling? Could you come on up here and share, sing a little bit of something for the lovely people from Bakersfield.
Daddy Ray, everybody. Come on now, give it up. At last, my love has come along. My lonely days are over.
Bakersfield has a lot of talent in all genres of music. I just hope to carry on the torch from all the people that I grew up with.
At last, the stars above are blue. My heart was wrapped up in clover. Night I looked at you.
T&T Customs stands for Tony and Teresa. I'm Big T, she's Little T. When I retired from the fire service, I needed something to do to fill my days.
I do want to make it clear that the guitar business and building guitars was Tony's baby. I support it, and I do a lot of the artwork on it and design work, but it really is Tony's hobby that's kind of turned into a business. It's taken a turn that's had where we've repurposed a lot of special woods from Trout's and Merle Haggard's boxcar, my dad's roll top desk.
There are guys that built guitars in this town that became very famous for that very thing. Mosrite guitars comes to mind, Hallmark guitars. So there's been a lot of guitar builders in Bakersfield that have made instruments throughout the last, 4 or 5 decades. Being in leagues with people like Sidney Mosley and Bill Gruggett, I mean, come on, man. I mean, those are some cool cats that not everybody knows. This is actually wood that was from Merle Haggard's boxcar home, childhood home, that we're building a guitar out of. We're repurposing that wood. This is one of only, right now, 3 guitars in the world that were made from that wood, and 2 of those we built. A friend of ours here in town, Darren Williams, built the first one actually, that ended up going to the Haggard family. This one is going to be part of our personal collection, and then the other one went to an organization here in town that's a charitable organization. So, and they're the ones that commissioned us to build the guitar and provided the wood for it.
My dream and my passion is singing.
Fly me to the moon. Let me play among the stars. Let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars. In other words, take my hand. In other words, darling, kiss me.
When I dropped my dog off, a total stranger, I had the assumption that I'd probably never see my dog again. It was quite emotional, but I got home, finally arrived in Bakersfield, California by a Greyhound bus, and we were living on a ranch out on Weed Patch Highway. And a few days later, my family gets a notification that there's a package at the train station up there. He shipped it by the train or something, and it's a dog crate. It's a dog in a crate. Sure enough, he was in a crate. There was no gate to that crate. He'd been in there several days, and not a mark on the crate because he was a good dog. But we took a few boards off the crate, and of course that dog, he had to pee and poop everywhere. I mean, he was really loosening it up. The man came through on his word, unbelievable, and built a crate. He didn't buy one, he had to build it and ship my dog COD to Bakersfield, California.
I was way unhappy being on the road, not being around my family. I thought about bringing him out there, but the money wasn't there. I couldn't bring him out there yet. Now, if I was like Merle Haggard and I could just take my whole family on the bus, that'd be different. But I wasn't. I'm a drummer. And I had to make that decision. It was hard, but I made it. And I'm glad I did because I have a successful business and now I got a grandchild. I'm loving life and I get to play all the time. Me and Monty play all the time. I play with Hot Taco. I play with a bunch of different bands.
I won't know till we're playing.
Tubes are warming up.
Almost there.
Yeah, we won't know anything till we play a song.
My little brother was the drummer originally with us, and the truth is that.
Hi, Tanner.
Tanner, we love you, bro.
Is he?
We
okay?
miss you too.
What
Yeah. Well, we've been on the road for 3 years, and he's got 2 little girls. One that's 5 years old, and they were growing up without their dad. And so it was time for him to go home and be a dad.
Yeah, Tommy Hayes, man, he's a great example of a hard-working American who ended up out in Bakersfield back at a time when Buck was starting out and the Bakersfield sound wasn't really solidified yet. He was into the Texas swing, just like Buck and Billy Mize and all those guys. They all loved that Texas swing of Bob Wills and all those singing cowboys, Gene Autry, Tex Ritter, but especially Bob Wills.
When you've climbed every mountain there is to climb.
While I was working at the Crystal Palace, you can't help but notice, why didn't Bakersfield already have a Music Hall of Fame? I wanted to do something that let us recognize the past. So we've taken the building that was American Sound Recording Studios. It's about a 10,000 square foot building, and we've done everything right now from junior theater, tribute concerts to the classics, live country shows, business conferences, birthdays. This is the normal setup for a concert, and you can see we've got all digital boards on the stage. The stage is only 2 feet up, so super close, super intimate for our whole audience for whatever the occasion. For the younger artists that come in, I think if I had to expose any type of mistake I know I made that I wish I could change, it would be learning how to work with everybody. You don't have to love everybody, but in this business, it's incredibly important to learn how to work with everybody. Feelings are incredibly important in this music business. There are a million people better than I am. I just love what I do. And I think if everybody remembered that as they were going, that they're not basing what they do on them being the best, but on what they love, we end up sharing that with each and every person. Instead of trying to lift ourselves up, we lift each other up as a team. And I think that, especially for Bakersfield, that's something that Buck did. He booked people, and he got people on stages, and he got people on television.
All the years we were on the road, the least favorite part, of course, for all of us is the traveling. Buck always talked about having his own place. He says, let the people come and see me instead of me going to where they are. We brainstormed all the different places that we enjoy playing, the Crazy Horse down in Orange County, and all the different places that had a look we liked, had a feel we liked, and put them all together and came up with the Crystal Palace. The Palace really was Buck's way to go back to his roots. He wanted to play the songs that he loved when he was starting out, of George Jones, and of course one of his favorite singers, Merle Haggard. He wanted to do Merle songs and do all the classic old things, Hank Williams, and just have fun again, kind of like back in the old club days. So he was doing it for himself in that respect, and also for the people of Bakersfield.
We're like the children of the Bakersfield sound. We just grew up in it. think it died for a while. I think it was not popular to be from Bakersfield. I think everybody had a complex. And now, after COVID, we have rediscovered ourselves as a city. And I believe that, you know, all the way from the theme of the city, Bakersfield, the sound of something better, that's right out of the streets of Bakersfield. I came here looking for something. The city has adopted it. They're going to have a huge sign that enters Bakersfield that has the music of the city. After COVID, a lot of the logistics of the bands that were playing changed. So, for instance, I'm not playing at the Palace anymore. It's not like, maybe by choice, but a little bit about circumstance. You know, the Buckaroos are not playing anymore. They've kind of retired. But we have a whole new generation of people that are coming up and creating their own sounds. And that's really exciting to me, to have a whole new generation of music makers. It's almost like they're the grandchildren of the Bakersfield sound.
You could tell Buck loved Bakersfield. You can just tell by the Bakersfield sign across the street outside the Palace. When he found out that that was going to be torn down and demolished, he jumped right in and invested a bunch of money and saved it. He was the guy that carried the torch for Bakersfield all over the world and stayed here until the very end.
Well, I'm headed down Highway 58. I'm gonna see my baby, and I can't be late. I ain't got no time to hesitate. That's why I'm taking Highway 58. I'll take 58. Or Highway 58. Ain't no interstate. It's just Highway 58. I don't wanna take that old Brundage Lane. It's got the same old two rugged lanes. And driving slow drive me insane. I don't wanna take that old Brundage Lane. I'll take 58. Well, Highway 58. Ain't no interstate. It's just Highway 58.
Met Kim, and she was a young, beautiful thing and loved horses, and we had a lot in common, and we still have a lot in common. Thank God she still takes care of me, and I'm a good boy.
I'm not sure my horse liked him as much.
I
Because the
had a-
first time he tried to kiss me, he was leaning over, we're walking side by side, and he's leaning over, and I go to lean over to kiss him, and my horse starts moving the opposite direction.
You almost lost a horse that day.
And he said, "Can't you control your horse?" And I said, "I think maybe she's trying to tell me something."